Next on Worcester News tonight, we're hearing from UMass Memorial Medical Center on their decision to cut inpatient psychiatric beds on university's campus. Plus, 2 teens struck by a van, how witnesses describe a frightening scene. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Catherine Andrioli. We begin tonight at City Hall, where UMass Memorial Medical Center addressed renovation to the university campus. They are closing 13 psychiatric inpatient beds to make room for more surgical beds, which the hospital says are critically needed. UMass Memorial Medical Center will close the beds on the 8 East Psychiatric Unit at the university campus. But they say they will maintain 14 beds for the most medically complex psychiatric patients. The hospital says they will add 18 new surgical beds. UMass says the shortage of these beds has led to higher waiting times in emergency rooms. Tonight, the hospital's president, who spoke publicly about the changes to city councilors.
So our greatest challenge right now is the number of medical surgical patients we have waiting in the emergency department. It's over 6,000 hours a month patients are waiting. These are patients that are sick enough to be admitted up into the university inpatient beds, both medical and surgical. We are denying access to patients that want to come to the medical center and are being referred from outlying hospitals because of the number or the lack of beds that we have at particularly the university campus right now.
Reducing inpatient psychiatric beds has drawn protests from nurses who say cutting mental health resources could put many patients at risk.
Well, our unit is a medical psychiatric unit, so we're able to take care of patients who have both medical and psychiatric needs, which is unique to most psychiatric units, and a lot of these patients will not be able to be cared for at the standalone hospitals that are being opened.
UMass Memorial said in a press release they are addressing a critical need to treat patients needing acute care in life or death situations. The hospital's president also noted there will be more than 275 new psychiatric beds opening at facilities throughout central Massachusetts in the coming year. One central Massachusetts town banned marijuana shops. Now Worcester is looking to do the same. At Tuesday's City Council meeting, Councillor Constantina Luke submitted a report concerning the wording on the town of Westborough's ordinance. Luke's also asked how the city could implement a similar ban on non-medical distributors of marijuana. Senator of the 2nd Worcester District, Michael Moore, says it all comes down to the voters in each city.
The city should go in whichever direction they want to go in. Again, the referendum that was passed by the voters. As long as they are staying within the framework of that, then the city should be able to regulate this new industry however they see fit.
2 teenage boys are in stable condition after being struck by a van Monday afternoon. Surveillance video shows the scary moments leading up to the crash as the driver of the van didn't appear to see the boys and hit them head on. Tonight we're hearing from a witness who watched the entire accident unfold. Our Brittany Schaefer has the story.
Surveillance video captures a scary scene Monday afternoon. True Value Hardware clerk Joshua Germain says he heard the loud sound of a van hitting 2 teenage boys just outside the store on Hamilton Street.
I just happened to look out the window at that moment. Like a second before it happened, I saw them try to scoot out of the way and then boom.
Both teens were taken to the hospital, and Worcester police say they are now in stable condition.
They were knocked back about 10-15 feet. One of the kids looked like he had a bloody nose, looked like he might have hurt his elbow and his knee. And the other kid, they had a neck brace on him, and he looked like maybe he was a little wobbly or shaky.
Germain says police used the store's surveillance video to help with their investigation. You can see witnesses rushing to help the teens before first responders arrived.
They looked at our camera because it was right in front of one of our cameras. So that helped them with the figuring out what the real story was. They were appreciative of that.
The driver, 29-year-old Devin O'Leary, was in a commercial van owned by Phoenix Communications. O'Leary stayed on scene and was arrested for an outstanding warrant out of Waltham District Court.
Now, at this point in the investigation, no citations have been issued, but it's anticipated at the conclusion of the investigation that they will be issued to the driver for failure to yield to a pedestrian.
Police say the teens were right next to a crosswalk. Germain says he has seen many accidents on the road, but since its reconstruction last year, it has been much safer.
I honestly think the construction has slowed everything down, made everything safer. You can tell people are not going as fast with the one lane. This was just a fluke accident. I've seen and heard less.
It's a double-lane road for each direction, and there's been speed issues that have been addressed in the past. So it is a road that we're aware of. We at times set up sting operations with the crosswalk.
Brittany Schaefer, Worcester News Tonight.
A statewide effort to fight the opioid crisis is launched today. A new group is hoping to raise $50 million to address the issue. Alicia Palumbo has the details.
Guillermina Montanez of Chelsea knows the perils of addiction all too well. At 3 months drug-free, she is a testament to the success that can be achieved with the right programs and support system in place.
You think you're all alone, but you're not.
But a big obstacle in achieving widespread recovery, especially with the opioid crisis, has been the lack of funding for organizations like Community Action Programs Inner City or CAPIC.
They go into detox. After detox, they have nowhere to go. So we have to try to get them into sober living. And that's always a challenge.
A little higher, please.
And that's where Rise Massachusetts comes in.
This is the opportunity for us in Massachusetts to do what we've long needed to do.
The newly formed independent nonprofit is a partnership of healthcare professionals, community organizations, and business leaders that has pledged to raise $50 million over the next 3 years to fight opioid addiction.
It's important for us to make sure that not only do we provide the treatment that people need, but we need to make sure that we start to continue to work on the prevention that people need as well.
That infusion of funding and resources could help recovering addicts like Montanez continue down the path of recovery.
It really is about time that people realize that just because we do drugs, we're not bad people. We're people with problems that sometimes don't know how to deal with it.
Rise Massachusetts has already secured commitments for $13 million of the $50 million it pledges to raise. In Boston South End, Alicia Palumbo, Worcester News Tonight.
Worcester County District Attorney Joseph Early Jr. speaking about the opioid crisis in central Massachusetts. Early says the region is working to address the crisis, but he says more needs to be done.
2016, Hank, we're still getting the numbers, and I tell you, we're right in the middle of the crisis. In 2015, we lost 219 people in Worcester County to opioids and heroin. And we know that with some recent legislation that the governor and the legislature passed, those numbers are probably going to stay high because they've reduced the pill supply. There isn't a weekend that goes by where we don't have, multiple opioid overdose deaths.
And the DA addressed the issue this week during a taping of the Hank Stoltz Experience on Charter TV3. And here's a look downtown at the famous Notre Dame Days Canadiens Church in Worcester. The building is set for demolition in a little over 2 weeks, but tonight supporters of the church had it lit up with the words, "Save me." Members of the Preservation Worcester attended Tuesday's City Council meeting in hopes of pushing back the demolition date. Last week, the building was sold to a new developer, and its future remains uncertain. City Manager Ed Augustus says Worcester could lose millions of dollars if one of President Trump's budget proposals is approved. The manager addressed a regional conference of the National Community Development Association. One of the President Trump's budget proposals would eliminate money for community block grant funding. Augustus says it would cost the city upwards of $4 million a year.
It would be a huge, huge blow to the city of Worcester if these monies went away, because they tend to allow us to fill gaps that we couldn't make up for in our own city budget. So they would leave needs that are unmet in the community if we didn't have these federal dollars.
Augustus says over the last 3 years, Worcester has used $10 million, impacting more than 600,000 housing units. Concerns tonight over the Worcester Regional Transit Authority's proposals to cut some of the bus services. The WRTA says they are necessary to close down a large budget deficit, and today they heard from riders who could be impacted. Our Rosalind Flaherty has the story.
Marcia Olm depends on taking the bus to get her around the city.
I don't have a car. I don't want to drive. I live in an elderly building, and a lot of us are in the same position. We need the public transportation.
So when she heard the Worcester Regional Transit Authority is considering cutting some services, like the one that brings the elderly to the grocery store, she says she wanted to cry.
We depend on that to get to the stores.
The WRTA says the changes are needed to close about a $900,000 deficit. They're proposing a 25-cent cash fare increase, along with merging routes and eliminating services including Elder Shopper and the downtown Hub Loop.
I haven't had a fare increase since 2009, so it's come time that expenses are getting up there. We're looking at cutting service that we know is unproductive in terms of ridership.
WRTA Administrator Jonathan Church says they're holding a number of public meetings, including the one Tuesday at the Senior Center, to get feedback.
We're not proposing it as an all or nothing. We're going to present it all to the public, get the public's feedback, and then present it to the WRTA Advisory Board.
Alm says the Elder Shopper bus comes every Wednesday morning and brings her to the supermarket. She says she wouldn't mind paying more to keep it around.
The elderly grocery bus puts us right in front of our house, takes us right in front of the store, and brings us right back. It's a necessity.
Rosalind Flaherty, Worcester News Tonight.
A former Southbridge school teacher is sentenced to more than 11 years in prison in connection to a child pornography case. The U.S. Attorney's Office confirms Scott Peeler, who was arrested in 2015, pleaded guilty to 3 counts of attempting to entice a minor to engage in unlawful sexual conduct and 1 count of possession of child pornography. Prosecutors say Peeler attempted to purchase live sex shows involving underage Filipino children. The 54-year-old was sentenced Monday in U.S. District Court.